Most of my shows are very useful for anybody who's in and around the golf world, whether you play, whether you coach, or you're just interested in general. But today's episode is a special one, and it goes across the spectrum. So whether you are a coach who has a staff of coaches or proteges under you, if you are a head professional director of golf or general manager and you're managing a staff of a pro shop or the staff of the entire club, even if you're a CEO of a Fortune 50 company or mid-level management, whatever your skill level, leadership is a quality that everyone needs to have and develop, and it's a skill that can be developed with just a little bit of work and some know-how. And my guest today is here to talk all about that. His name is Joe McNamara, and Joe is a former combat decorated U.S. Marine Corps officer, and he is also the founder and president of Impact, which is a premier leadership development and team building firm. Joe not only was on led more than 100 combat missions throughout Afghanistan and other enemy strongholds, but he also was selected to command and lead the Marine Corps drill instructors at Parris Island, where he spearheaded a leadership development program and mentored the leaders who were charged with training our nation's next generation of warriors. After his departure from the Marine Corps and active duty is where Joe founded Impact, and he has partnered with athletes, coaches, corporate teams around the country, and he helps them to cultivate a championship culture and build high-performing teams. This is a very interesting conversation. It was a pleasure to sit down and talk to him. And his perspective from what he learned, not only in his education, but also in the real-world application in battle, which the ultimate goal is to keep the men and women under you safe, alive, and unharmed. If it can work in those situations, then it has a very, very high chance of working in the corporate or the management world. Joe gives ideas on why leadership is important, not only for those at the top, but also for those at the entry level and everybody in between, how you can develop that skill and be a leader, and what it takes to make that commitment. So I'm not going to spoil it all. I'm going to let you listen to him discuss it, as he is the expert. So please give it up and give a very big Golf 360 welcome to my guest today, the president of Impact and U.S. Marine, Mr. Joe McNamara. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they used to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. This episode of the Golf 360 podcast is brought to you by Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms with their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie-cutter model, which is often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns, and at Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you will receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Contact them today at 248-840-3863 or www.affinitywealthmg.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. Okay, I am very happy to have Joe McNamara from Impact on the show. Joe, thanks for making the time to come on. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Fired up to be here, man.
Big golf fan. I see you got your Masters shirt on. You going to jacked up to watch the tournament this week?
That time of the year, right? What better things to do right now than watch some of the excitement there? So I enjoy it. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy playing it. I don't know how good I am, but it's fun to get out there with friends and get out on the courses, you know?
Mm-hmm. What do you think of Tiger coming back?
It's an interesting play. I mean, it's showed just some of what he's made of, right? In the determination that he can really go through and do it. I think he thrives off of obviously people telling him he can't do something, or kind of thrives off of that. What's impossible, that watch this type of a moment. I think that's in his DNA, but ultimately, I mean, I think it's great for the game to get him back there and watch.
I if he makes the cut, I can't even imagine what the TV ratings are going to be. I mean, when did he win? In 19, and they were off the charts. I could only imagine that it's going to be even more so, because you don't. I mean, it's proven that you don't know if you're going to see him again.
Right.
I mean, with just life in general.
Right.
And that was illustrated to everybody. You know,
and
it can be taken from you at any minute.
Right. And there's a level that, I was talking about pressures of privilege, right? And of all the things that he's done, and he's gone through all these different areas, he's obviously had a lot of pressure on him throughout his career and where it's going. But as I've watched the TV coverage of it this week, it's really kind of fascinated me. Here's a guy you can tell he's still struggling to kind of walk on some of that, but it's the amount of pressure that is put on him. Right? They try to back it off, like, well, hey, just him being out here is a victory in itself. But then the next, 24/7 coverage of him just being out at Augusta is I'm sure that pressure is starting to mount on him. That being out there and playing, Thursday, Friday, you could chalk that up as a victory, but we know that's not what's in his head, right? It's not what's in a champion's head. He would not come out there if he did not think that he had a chance to win. So it's really kind of interesting watching that makeup, that DNA of a champion out there and embracing this level of pressure involved in that. And I think there's a lot of guys that would break under that,
Well, I think what a lot of people don't understand is whether you're at the peak level that he is, or you're on the PGA Tour and you're playing in the Masters, that the pressure levels are all perspective based off of what that person has experienced. So like, he's obviously accomplished as much as anybody in the history of the game. So his pressure is different than somebody else's pressure who's maybe trying to win their first major. And I want to talk to you about that as we go on, and your business, and how you differentiate between leadership, which is what you're an expert in, and say how the way you look at things versus the way that people who are following you look at things. I think that's a kind of interesting dynamic. But I'd first, as a Marine, and once a Marine, always a Marine, I want to thank you for your service, and I'm sure all the listeners would thank you as well. So we appreciate what you've done, and everyone you work with, and all the things that you've accomplished.
Thanks,
very
Pete.
much appreciated.
It was my honor, man. I loved every second of it.
So just for somebody who might not know who you are, or they maybe just checked you out a little bit, can you tell people what Impact is?
Sure. So Impact is a premier leadership development and training company that we build world-class teams and world-class leaders. And, I don't know that there's anything such as a leadership expert, because there's so much art involved into it. But everything that we preach, everything that we teach, and everything that we walk people through is based and rooted on the leadership lessons that we learned in combat. So it's stuff that has been tried and tested and proven on the field of battle. And if it works there, it works in any industry. It works in any role of what you've got. And so we do that in a number of different ways, working with teams, and be it companies, or most of our work has actually been in collegiate and professional athletics, working with premier athletes, working with those mentalities they're going through. And so we work with teams in that regard, or just working with individuals to say, hey, I want to prepare myself for increased responsibility. We run different programming to pair up with those types of individuals and help them get to that next level, just kind of deepen their well of how they can impact the lives of others around them.
Would you say that on the battlefield that is the ultimate test of let's just say the role of leadership, because the alternative of failure could mean the loss of life. So if it works in that off the charts ungodly amount of pressure, it you would think, or it should work in, let's say, a business environment or in a sports environment.
Right. I mean, I think that it's, to use the word ultimate, I guess that's fair, right? I just think that the consequences for failure in combat are much more severe than they are in sports or business or where it's going, but the principles remain the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, in making mistakes and where it's going, if I haven't done the right preparation and we're not executing the right way, we're not making the right decisions, it could cost life, limb, or injury, right? In business, it's typically more things that you're seeing in financial returns, right? We didn't do the right things and now we're paying the price in Q2, Q3, what have you. Sports, same type of thing. If we're not putting in the work, we're not doing things, we get held accountable on game day. So I just think that in combat, to use that, using that word ultimate that you use, is I just think it's the consequence is so much more severe where we are, and that's why we lean on it, right? Is we've learned those where the stakes are the highest, and coming back into that, so you can now take that and turn it. How can we leverage that? Leverage those experiences, leverage the mistakes that we've made to positively, give back and impact the lives of others to help them learn through that as well.
Yeah, and it was interesting that as we had the correspondence back and forth, and I told you the story of Colonel Smith, Drew Smith, about when I asked him if he wanted to come on, and your response was very similar when I asked you. It's like I'm not sure how much I could add value to a golf podcast, and then I told you his was a little different, but as we went along, I think that if anybody out there is kind of wondering themselves, that leadership, I mean, it spans everything. It's if you're as you and I discuss, if you're a coach and a student, if you're a coach who has apprentices working under you, if you don't show them leadership and develop trust, how are they going to learn and grow? If you're a general manager or you're a director of golf or you're a head professional and you obviously have a staff, the same thing applies. So it's a fundamental, I think, that applies to no matter you can take that to any segment of the population or industry, and it's a highly valuable skill that somebody can and needs to develop if they're to advance their career and achieve what they want to. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we see. Like I said, that would fall, especially kind of in the golf side. Golf has a lot of individual kind of aspects to it, right? Be it
Mm-hmm.
playing or even in the golf development world. And so from our angle and how we attack that on a leadership piece, it's more about helping somebody understand. And what we talk about from a leadership standpoint is you have to first become somebody worth following, right? Your leadership is influence, and as we talk about it, you get it in one of two ways: your title and who you are. And so, but the reality of it is, we all know this. Nobody really cares about your title, right? Nobody cares
Mm-hmm.
that they're not necessarily, they're going to follow you because your title, because they might have to, right? The chain of command or just how it's going, and the you're in charge of me or you're the boss, what have you. But more importantly, we build real teams and high performing teams when we build a level of trust, and that comes from who we are, how I engage with my teams, how I develop my teams, how I empower them and do those different things. And so in the golf side of it, where we the guys that we've been fortunate enough to work with and where it's going, it's helping them align their actions with their vision and the values of the type of golf pro that they want to be, right? How they're doing those things. They all kind of, well, this is where I want to go. And so we just help define that based on that and their daily actions, what you need to cut away from you, what you need to improve upon, what you need to make sure you're doing more of, so that you are, at least from the very beginning, starting to become somebody worth following before you're in that position where you get the title.
Do you need would a leader need to develop trust? Because you can be, as you said, you can be a leader by title, but you need the two things that I've always abided by, that leaders need followers and they need trust, and you don't get one without the other. So how would somebody go about developing that, and how would you teach them to be able to develop that?
Yeah. So I mean, the answer to your question is absolutely right. Trust is pivotal in any team and anything that you're doing. But as I said, leadership is influence, and if you break that down a little bit more, it's more so it's about relationships, and I think trust is the foundation of every relationship. So into developing it, it's a level of intentionality, right? Of how I'm going to. This goes back to making sure you understand your vision and aligning your actions with that, as if you're kind of defining the legacy of leadership that you want to have and the type of leader that you want to be. That's an important step. But what the difference be, and that's great, right? That good people can have success doing that. But the difference
Mm-hmm.
between guys who have to do that and really champions and great leaders is they go take that next step and they say, hey, this is the type of leader that I want to be. But then they do that audit to say, what does that leader do? How do I put that into action? And so as they kind of start defining those things, if building relationships is an important piece, everything that we teach at Impact, we talk about, it's rooted in character. You have to have sound character with what you're doing. People can respond to that very well. And so it goes deep into how I build that relationship. What are the things, if I know that I want to build relationships and I want to deepen my trust with my team, what are the steps that I have to take in order to do that? How do I treat people? How do I engage with people? What's the level of grace that I can give people as they're making mistakes, or as they're developing, or as they're doing awesome things? Can I sit there and be a supporting asset to them where they're going through? And so building relationships is hyper important, but I think the trick is how you do that, right? How are you going about that? How are you interacting with people, whether it be people above you, your peers around you, or subordinates, right? Thinking about how I'm going to build relationships with all those people deepens that trust. But there's the biggest area where I sit there and tell people it should not be a competitive differentiator. Is just doing what you say you're going to do is one of the easiest ways to build trust. And
Yeah, it's
unfortunately,
like
people don't do that.
one of the easiest ways to build self-confidence is make if you promise something that yourself that you're going to do it, make sure that you do it, right? So if someone could go 30 days and say, here's what I'm going to do for these 30 days, whether it's your diet or your training, or you're going to show up early to work, you're going to, if you're in sales, you're going to make 10 phone calls a day, or if you're in golf, you're going to practice your putting 100 putts, whatever it is, and commit to that. The level of self-confidence skyrockets. So I could only imagine what it would be like if you do that as a leader, and you not only tell people to do it, but they're watching you as they're trying to learn how to do those things or become accustomed to it, and you're illustrating exactly what you're saying. So you're talking the talk and walking the walk, right?
Right. Being able to get down there, right? There you do a lot of student of the game, right? Where you're doing, and one of the best cultures in probably anything in any sports or anywhere is the New Zealand All Blacks, their national rugby team, and where they're going. And there's a really great book out there about them. And one of the things it talks about is an important aspect of a leader is never being too big to sweep the sheds.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about that culture, right, is when you're an all world player, you've now earned the right to be the first one to grab the broom, right? And in honestly, in American sports, in a lot of areas, we've had that backwards. It's all the junior guys doing all the grunt work where it's going, and guys, and I think it breeds complacency in a lot of areas because, well, hey, I've done it. And it gives this sense of achievement. I've made it. I've arrived. I can let my guard down. And the second you do it, that's when we start to fail, and we start to complacency starts to creep in because there's somebody that's willing to outwork us all day long. I mean, go back to the beginning of our conversation. We just talked about Tiger and what he's doing and coming to Augusta. The one thing that I can say without a doubt is Tiger has absolutely outworked everybody else in the field coming in. And these are pros. They're working really hard. But I guarantee you, if you asked him, he can say it without a doubt. He has outworked that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we kind of walk through that, if we allow that complacency to break in, and we're not willing to get down there with our team, and we're not willing to get dirty, and we're not willing to do the things to show them or help them or support them, those are some of the elements that start to break down that trust.
That's interesting how you said about the All Blacks, the rugby team. I'm going to butcher this. I'm sure someone out there listening probably, oh, you got this story all wrong. But I want to say it was Bobby Jones after he had won the Grand Slam, and he went back to school to get I think he had a couple degrees, but he went back, I think, to Georgia Tech. And I mean, here he is, the most popular golfer in the world, and he wanted to get involved with the golf team. So they said, we really don't have anything except you can work in the locker room, like cleaning up the shoes and basically shining shoes and things like that. And he did it, and I mean, he did it without any ego whatsoever.
Right.
I mean, that's just mind-boggling. And then, as people found out who he was, they're like, "Holy cow, we can't have him doing this." But he's like, "No, no, no, I'll do it. I mean, this is my job. I'm going to take care and do it the best I can." Is that kind of the same example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to find that with people going back to the character matters aspect. A cornerstone for good leaders of sound character, I think, is humility. Right? They're rooted in humility in what they do, and that doesn't just show up on willingness to do, shine shoes and take on jobs that you know other people may feel are beneath you. It really comes into how I interact with my team, right? If I've got a
Hmm.
level of humility, am I the one that always has to have the answers, or do I have hey, I'm confident enough that I can invite other people's ideas in. I'm not threatened by all these people coming in, and I know that, hey, if I've got that level of humility, I'm okay sharing that stage, right? And so that's why I always talk about that humility. I think it can rear its head in that way, like you said, with Bobby Jones and shining the shoes. But how it also transcends is just in our daily interactions on how we carry ourselves. And so humility is just a piece, and I think it's a cornerstone that you find in just about any great leadership example that's out there.
Yeah, Jocko Willing talks a lot about that. I've listened to a number of his podcasts, and he's been on obviously Joe Rogan and some others, and where he discusses how he encouraged men and soldiers that were under him, if they had an idea that they think would work better, that they should come to him and say, "Hey, Commander, I think this might work to our advantage. What do you think, or would you consider implementing this?" And you're right. I mean, that's how, because not one person's not going to see everything, especially if they're not in the thick of it, so to speak.
Right.
Um, are you familiar with Simon Sinek's book,
Mhm.
Leaders Eat Last?
Yeah. The
I thought that
concept
was very interesting.
concept
You,
that he wrote and made a whole lot of money off of by following Marines around.
the Marines,
Right.
right?
So Simon got all the credit for the things that are just ingrained into us as Marines and where it's going. Um, it is. It's a good book, though.
Um, the other author that I read a fair amount of his stuff, Sebastian Younger. Did you read Tribes at all?
Absolutely.
That was very interesting. Where I think he was the one that discussed, leaders will be lavished with first eat in contrast to Simon's book, or they'll be given better living quarters or something like that. But if danger were to show up, they're expected to be the front line. They're expected to go out and meet that danger and protect the rest of the tribe or the community.
Right.
That was very interesting. I'd recommend that to anybody that's out there today.
Well,
Um,
there's the understanding in I think some of what he talks about, right, in a leader, right, or anybody who's running an organization or what they're doing is you are responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen in that unit. And I was just talking with a client this morning where they're coming through and understanding how that transcends is you run into this idea that, hey, what comes with that and that kind of burden of command means I'm going to get a whole lot more of the praise when things go right than I deserve, but I also take a whole lot more of the blame when things go wrong. But how we share that, again, going back to the humility piece, how we share that information with our team. I had one of my teammates with Impact is it's his saying, and I love it, is it's I fail and we succeed. And in leaders, and how do we do that? And when we're running an organization, when we make mistakes in where it's going and it fails, and I'm responsible for that. I have failed in some way or another. I have failed to prepare my team the right way. I failed to inspect what I needed to inspect. I failed to communicate it properly, whatever it is. But when we succeed, we as leaders, we have to be able to share that amongst the team because we can't do anything alone. And being able to recognize some of that, and a little bit of that is with the tribe that you're around, the people that you're around, they're going to keep you in that position. And a lot of that's what
mhm.
Sebastian talks about in that book.
Yeah. As far as you mentioned working with some golfers, is it athletes, golfers, or is it like a golf club setting where you're working with managers and employees? Without naming names, we're not asking you to
Yeah, no,
divulge,
I've done both.
private
I've worked.
information.
Yeah, we've worked with some college golf teams that are out there more on the team piece, and it's more when working with them, it's more mentality. But I've probably done more on your traditional club staff golf pros and how they're running that from a director of golf position or a GM position down, is how we bring this team together and where it's going, and the development of these assistants and the growth that needs to come through it so they can one day be head pros and GMs or directors of golf at different areas.
What would be an example of what you see often that you're advising on that might be a common denominator in the club setting?
Well, I can tell you that the number one thing that we talk about, it does not matter the team. It doesn't matter the football team, a golf team, a business, a corporation. The number one thing that we look at and what we try to get to is a pathway of success is focusing and developing your small unit leaders. And so most organizations, it does not matter the industry. It really has kind of this leader follower network, right? Hey, I'm the direct, just using the golf setting, I'm the director of golf, and I'm coming up with the plan for the week or what's happening, and I'm just tasking things out, and people are just sitting around and waiting to be told what to do, and given that direction. And most organizations do that. Well, the problem is you reach that capacity real quickly because the director of golf has a lot of things on his plate where he's going through it. Conversely, what we try to get organizations to understand is really building a network of effective leadership, right? And layers of leadership. So I want to take passive followers sitting down at that, the outside services role or a first assistant role, just kind of this passive followers waiting to be told what to do in this guidance. And I want to turn them into active leaders, right? Helping them understand how to assess a situation, make a decision. And instead of asking and being told what to do, is now I'm going to turn that around and I come up to the director of golf and I say, hey, here's the situation. I watched 7 cars come up today and nobody was there to greet them. I think that, you've told us customer experience is really important. I feel that is a big gap for us. So I intend to take this person. I'm going to take Steve from down here at Cars, and I'm going to put him up there from the hours of 7 a.m. to 10:30, so that we can make sure every car is greeted up there. Now the director of golf can sit there, or the head pro, whatever, they can sit there and just quickly sit there and go, okay, hey, that makes sense. Good, go execute. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than what I typically see is someone sits there and they're like, hey, we're not having a very good customer experience out there, when cars are coming up. And so it just goes on the task list for the head pro or the director of golf to figure out until he can get out of this meeting and come out of this meeting. And maybe he gets to that by Wednesday to come up with the plan and wait till he drafts it. So by developing these small unit leaders underneath you and creating layers of leadership, you just start to unleash all types of innovation. You unleash the adaptability and the problem solving at the lower levels, right? And that's what starts to drive successful organizations from where they can go. And you start to get the head pro and the director of golf out of the details and able to drive the kind of the strategic level that they need to be doing where they're at.
So is it giving more freedom to the people at the entry level or early level positions within the organization?
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's empowerment of it, right? I think it's empowerment of it. Is just sitting there and going, again, very similar conversation to a client I was having this morning, is when we have that title of leader, we tend to white knuckle a lot of these things of going, hey, this is my responsibility. I'm the one that has to do these things. Why? We cannot be successful like that on the battlefield. If I've
mm-mm.
got one of the last battle spaces I turned over, I had 109 Marines and sailors under my. If they were all waiting for me to have perfect situational awareness of everything that was going on and perfect communication, like we would fail, right? So if we're not going to do it like that on the battlefield, why would we do that anywhere else? We need to be able to sit there and be able to provide an intent from the top down. Hey, here is my overarching intent of where we're going. Craft the vision of what needs to happen, and then lean on my small unit leaders to get us there, how they do it. And that, going back to the humility piece, is sometimes me as the director of golf, the head pro, they might do it differently than I would. But is that going to get us to the same spot without, causing us mission failure or doing something else? Great. They might take a little bit of a longer road to get there, but I have to be willing to sit back and let them do that, because they're gonna learn. Even if they succeed, they're gonna learn something. But if they fail, they're gonna learn something, and it provides me opportunities to coach that out of them, and they're only going to get better and better and better, more reps that I give them to make decisions and make plans and execute on those plans.
Is there somewhat of uh, a, okay? If you take the organization of a golf operation, you have the cart staff, and then you have your assistants in the pro shop, and then you have your management levels. At down times, let's say if they run double T's or it's just a slower time, it's very easy that I found, because I mean, I was there. I was a kid, teenager working in the cart barn, and there's nothing to do, and you just say, okay, I'm just going to sit around and read a magazine, or if you're an assistant, do you come up with common denominators of things that, hey, if you're slow, here's a list of things that you can and should be doing, or and then let's say that if they've done those, that then you leave it up to them, or you give them the opportunity to say, look, I want you to come up with some things or look for things that you think could be improved, and but do them. And then if you made the mistake, you're not going to be reprimanded, but it's like, okay, how can we make that better? I applaud you for trying. Is that kind of how you bring that along?
Sure. I mean, I think that's a way to do it, right? Um, the other thought that kind of comes to mind for me in that scenario, right, is if I'm at the management level and I have bred this culture of development that I want, and I've provided that intent. If we're a little slow, I want to be seeing again that bias for action. I want to be seeing my first assistant or our head pro even going down there and grabbing somebody, right? Grab a junior person and say, "Follow me. You're going to shadow me for the next hour and a half." And why not? They're getting more exposure to what's going on. They're going to be able to generate some other questions. But people are leaving every job, not just in the golf world. They're leaving jobs all over the place right now. And we've talked about that of nobody cares that you've got an opening for at your cart barn, right? They can go do that at any golf course. Just about
Mm-hmm.
anybody will hire them right now. What's going to keep them or what's going to attract them is, hey, these guys that are hungry that say, hey, I want to get into the golf business and this is where I got to start. I'm going to go to this place that I've heard, their first assistants and their head pros and their director of golf, they're developing and they're intentional about the development of people out in the cart barn so that I can be ready to be in foster that growth along there so that I can be ready to be a first assistant when I go through the process, and then I'll be ready to be, I've seen that stuff before. And so I think that's how I'd go about it is where are we creating the opportunities, or do we have our eyes on to see opportunities where I can say, hey, who can I bring along to look at this? Or who can I task this out to today? Right? Hey, this is what's going to go on. Typically it's a head pro role. Hey, great. First assistant, you're going to do it. And I'm going to watch, I'll be here to support you and serve you. If you got questions, let me know, but you're going to run this. Giving them that experience early on allows that development to it. And people love that. Right. But it also conversely gives you an opportunity to evaluate the people that you have. If I'm a head pro and I've got a first assistant that we're trying to step up, and it's kind of this coaching tree that maybe we want them to do more at our club, or you know what, they're going to come, it's time for them to get up and they're going to move on to another area, my name is going to be attached to that person. It's a small enough business. People
Mm-hmm.
know the pros that you work for and where it's going on. What am I doing to prepare that person? And if I try to continuously put them in different roles and different positions of increased responsibility, and they just, you know what, they don't want it, they don't really go after it, that's going to tell me a lot about the people that I have on my team, right, and where it's going. So I think it works well in both ways on how we kind of navigate through that.
Do you think if the people that, as you work down the pecking order, do you think that as they feel safe giving their input, and that they're not going to be looked down on, or blown off or something like that, but it's accepted, and it's actually not just looked at, but it's tried, and let's say it works, and then they're given accommodation, uh, do you think that builds into the development of the culture, and that people will want to gravitate towards being part of an organization that values their input? I mean, it seems like everybody wants to be a part of something, and it's not just dollars, it's not just uh, benefits. It's a part of something bigger that they would like to contribute to. That
Absolutely.
develops the whole leadership mantra and the whole culture of an organization.
I couldn't agree more. I think that that's what people look for, right? And they look for that mentorship that goes along with that, which is part of the leaders breed leaders, right? So if I'm in a role,
Mm-hmm.
again, going to the title, the who I am piece means how am I interacting with people? How am I developing these people behind me? I think you can tell a lot about a leader once they left an organization. Not really while you can when they're there, but what you see when they're there is you don't know how much they're actually doing, how much heavy lifting are they doing, right? But when they leave an organization, does it dip? And hey, he was doing all the work, or he was providing all the tasking out, and so everybody was just kind of sitting around waiting to be told what to do. Or when that person leaves, the unit continues to thrive because we've got the right people in the position. That is where you can really tell how good of a leader that I had, right? And so as it goes through there, I totally agree. I think that's what people are looking for, is a place of belonging where I've got ideas. I'm smart. I'm thinking of things. I want someone to be receptive. And if I come up with something that is not, is am I getting reprimanded for it, or am I getting laughed at for it, or am I getting kind of encouraged of, hey, you know what, we're not going to, here's why we can't do that, right? Because they don't have the same vision that or knowledge that a director of golf has. They might have great ideas, but they don't know some of the legalities or some of the things they can't do. And so it's how I coach that person. Goes back to that character piece of, hey, I'm not going to laugh at you and belittle you and tell you to go stay in your lane. Is this, I'm going to help you understand, that's a great idea, but here's why we can't do this or this or this, or have you
Yeah.
thought through that or that.
Is it the encouragement to give them that opportunity? Is that what the first step is?
From a culture standpoint, for sure.
Yes.
Are they aware of it? And a lot of times it's not something as simple as, hey, this is what it's not going to happen overnight, right? Hey, I want people to come to me with your ideas, right? The leader, you're going to have to build that over time and pull that out of people for a little while before it becomes just a known behavior within the culture.
I would have to think a very simple example would be a director of golf, say, maybe he recognizes or she recognizes something that could be done, and goes and sits with one of his or her staff, and says, hey, here's a question for you. If we wanted to do this, what would you identify as the first thing needed in that process? And then just let them answer. And if it's completely off, then maybe offer, well, what would you think if we did this? Right? Maybe as I manage some people, that's whether that was right or wrong. I used to try to do that to let them come up with the idea, or at least to teach them and get them started on the path of how to come up with ideas, and then let them roll with it and go see how they develop it on their own.
Right.
And being someone who had been in that position at that facility, I had an idea if they were getting off track, or I told you have the opportunity to prove me wrong if the experience that I had was incorrect. But would that be a way to get them started, whether it's a cart staff or a first assistant, or if you're seeing that they're not doing something, maybe change their perspective so that they can see it, and then ask for their input on what they would do.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. Get them out there, and that starts to get them to think, and it creates buy-in. That's the benefit of doing something like that as well. I always talk about, nobody wants to call their baby ugly, right? So
Hmm.
I can sit here as a director of golf and tell you, hey, this is what we're doing today. You're going to go do X, Y, and Z, and the team's going to sit down there, and we all know, right? Okay, they might execute, and people are going to grumble about the plan because it's not their plan. But when I seek the input, hey, the top down planning process is, this is where we need to go. This is what we need to accomplish. And I get some bottom up refinement, right? I want to hear from the perspective of, directors of golf. They're up in the management role. They don't know what's going down in the cart barn on the daily piece, what's going on. I want to get that bottom up refinement from the plan. And now that's their plan, right? So they're going to have this buy-in that came from it, is, hey, I pitched this idea to the head pro or the director of golf, and they said, run with it. It's not their plan, it's my plan. I have to go execute it, and they're gonna care that much more when it's their plan and what they've done. So I think the added benefits of being able to do something like that, outside of the personal and professional development that comes from that, but the cultural benefits and the performance benefits are just, it is the path to success.
That's one thing I see quite often in the golf industry in our area. We're both here in Bluffton and Hilton Head. In the business industry, is whenever something's going to be done. Let's just say, for this, the simple understanding that most golfers who listen to the show would understand, is if there was going to be a new cart barn built, or if there's going to be a new clubhouse built, rarely, if ever, is the cart staff approach to say, what would you recommend that we do to make this as efficient and as productive as possible? I have never heard that once.
Yep.
And I mean, you're talking about spending millions and millions of dollars on a clubhouse renovation or new, or whatever it's going to be, and you're not consulting with the people who use it the most. I mean, it's an untapped resource that's invaluable, or the assistants in the pro shop. I mean, the developers or whoever's doing, or the membership, the committees, they'll go spend thousands and thousands of dollars, and not to take away from architects, because they have made some unbelievably beautiful buildings, but it's like they will go find out how to design it to be this, that, or the other thing, but they never ask the people who actually are in that environment and in that facility every single day.
Right. And that's where the
Is
best
that just
ideas are going to come
it?
from.
Would that be an example of the wrong way or the incorrect way to do it?
Well, I don't know if I think it's just missing a lot, right? I mean, I think it's a way to do it. Like you said, that's what everybody does. And you have these GMs that have been around for a long time. You've got all the management that's been in the position. The reality is they haven't been down in the cart barn for a long time, and it's not, I think that it's a dichotomy of, I'm not going to just take whatever the cart barn and all the people who are down at the lower levels running and doing these things. It's not just going to take every suggestion that they say, right,
Right.
and do
Yeah,
that.
you're not just taking all of it.
But I'm gonna be the filter. I want that information because then I'm gonna use my filter. Because what they don't have down at their level is some of the knowledge that the GM has, or that
Hmm.
the superintendent has, or the director of golf has. So I want to blend that to get. That's where I'm going to come up with the best solution, right? And so that's why I'm just a believer in the top down planning and bottom up refinement. That's going to get us to probably the best plan in coming through. But it blows my mind how we will and this is every industry that I'm in, we will take the input of people who they're not even down there doing it and they haven't done it in years. And so everything's changed in technology. But in the golf business, we'll go take a member's opinion over, the director of the cart barn, all these different things are going through. And the member's never even been down there. He's never run a cart barn.
Right.
He's never done any of that. But it's like, oh, he's a valuable member, so we'll take his opinion, right? So I think it's
Hmm.
just putting it through that filter of, if I've got the knowledge at the top and the management role and the experience of doing that, how can I blend the perspective from the people who are going to be out there doing it? That's where I'm going to come up with the best plan, is when I include that.
Where does leadership go wrong? Is it a lack of education? Is it a lack of skill development? Removal or reduction of incentive to do the right thing? What do you see from working with so many organizations and
Yeah, I think
consulting?
that's a big question that I don't know that there's a direct answer to. I can tell you what I see the most, and where I think we add the most value with people is I love to work with emerging leaders and small unit leaders.
Hmm.
Mainly because any consulting firm, any coaching firm, things, they typically like to work with the execs and where it's going. The way that we approach that is we get a full understanding of their culture, what they're trying to implement, and we get that understanding of it. But now it's, let me get down into the lower levels and start preparing your leaders for increased responsibility. In just about every industry that we've been in, I think the common mistake that is made is there's not a real intentional development of leaders before they get into these roles. So now I get into a head pro role or a director of golf role. I've never had more than one or two people underneath of me, and now all of a sudden I'm sitting here and I've just like this massive on the job training opportunity of, you better have a really good GM that's going to be pouring into me on a daily basis, but I've got now a whole level of increased responsibility. So I don't know that, if there's an easy answer for where it goes wrong consistently going through, but where it can really improve is the development of our emerging and our small unit leaders, preparing them for increased responsibility before they get into the seat. Because what I've watched, most leaders that, or I should say people that are in leadership roles, right, that have never prepared, that have never taken any type of coaching, who have never been in positions like that before, when they get in an organization, they get a little bit of a challenging leadership situation, or scenario, and they're not prepared for it. It just gets worse. And now, not only is it worse, it's a more difficult leadership challenge, and they weren't even able to do the basic piece, and it just spirals out of control. Morale starts to go down, trust starts to go down. And so, what are we doing to prepare these people before they get into these roles? And I would caveat that with saying, who you have teaching leadership development absolutely matters. And most places that, oh, we've got a leadership development program, or we've got this, but the person who's teaching it has never led anybody. Or, hey, we bought
Hmm.
the curriculum and we're putting them through that. Well, that's not really preparing my director of golf, who now has to fill a whole new team. What does he know about hiring? What does he know about, the talent acquisition process and the recruiting process? What does he know about communicating across that flow? And so getting the right people to, one, teach and help and coach your leaders is important. And then it's equipping them with the tools that they need before they're in those roles. I think you can curb a lot of that failure that many of these organizations see.
If an organization, if they've gotten so bad, like they're really out of control, the leadership is uh, pulled in 10 different directions, in that they're going to meetings, and then they're trying, if a general manager's in meetings 6 hours a day with the house committee and the member guest committee and the turf committee and all these different committees, and they're only given a small portion of time to to start a program like that, to develop their entire staff. When they call someone like you in and your team, and it's spiraling out of control, how do you first stop the spiral and then get it back on track? Because it's got to be, for them, they know that something's wrong, but and they're fried out already, and that they've been trying to do it, and they're doing their daily activities or whatever's pulling them in other directions. But there's got to be a growing pain of stopping what they're doing. Here's what you need to do. Maybe they're not seeing the results yet, but you talk them into sticking to it until they get over that hump and they start to see this actually working. Can you take us through how that might happen when an organization is really spiraled out of control and there is lack of total leadership?
Yeah, I mean,
What would be the process?
spiraling out of control or even in control, our first step is we come through and we run assessments, right? So
Mm-hmm.
both meeting with individuals and team, but we watch, right, the culture of the team, how the interaction of the team, the meetings of the team, and kind of going through to get an understanding of where they are right now and where they're trying to go. And like I said, most places, whether they're spiraling out of control or they're running really well, is they have a vision of what they think they want to do. What we're able to do and help them with is after we've made that assessment, is we help align the actions of the team to match the vision, right? And we put that through. So sometimes that is through team training and workshops, coming in and working with teams and starting to equip them with the things they need on a team aspect. We're really working on the individual level to go, hey, do we have a couple of people in here that they don't fit our vision in our culture? And we need to think about moving them out, right? Because they're an anchor to where we're trying to go. We've got to dismount that individual out of our company. We've got to transition him out and move him to a different direction. Or, you know what, this is where we're trying to go. And we've done these assessments. They don't have the talent that they need to try to get to that vision. So we can help them on kind of the talent acquisition piece and where you're looking at that. But then it's we get into the meat of really equipping your leaders at the various levels with the tools that they need to be successful. So from starting at the top down, they're directors of golf. How are they running more of the higher level type stuff, right? Or our task organization, our communication. How am I communicating the team? How am I developing the people that are underneath of me? Starting at that level, but then as we get deeper into that, I want to work across, really cross functionally with everybody that they have in that organization to start building a bias for action. And that's where most of them go wrong. And so we start to sit there and we walk them through, to your point, I've done this a number of times. You go in and the guy's sitting on the cartboard and he's got nothing to do, and so he's on his phone for 45 minutes. Great. I love that scenario because now I'm going to get him. I get him up, put your phone down, one, come up here with me, and let's go find something to do. And so that is an action, right? That's the behaviors. And so as we come through with the workshops and the coaching, we start to help them understand and change their behaviors and their actions to walk through exactly what you just said. Hey, what are the things that we need to stop doing right now that are preventing us from accomplishing our vision and our mission? What are the things that we need to start doing? Change. We haven't been doing them well. That's what we equip them with and align them into that. And identifying some of the things that, by and large, everybody we've been with, they're doing some good things. Let's help them really focus in on those so that they can understand the things that they've got to start doing, the things they need to continue doing, and somewhat more importantly, the things they need to stop doing, both actions and people that may need to move on from where they're at.
Do you find in today's world, with cell phones in particular, maybe social media and so many distractions, that it's very, very easy for people to just burn time and be non-productive doing things that are just scrolling and going, let's call it brain lazy?
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. You
And
know,
how do you guys recommend addressing that when you go into an organization or facility?
and that's mentality again, right? That's the type of stuff that we look at the talent acquisition piece, we're looking at attributes and coming to bring the types of people in. I want people with high drive. I want people with problem solving skills. I want curious types of people, right? If you hire those types of people, they're going to be sitting around. I'm not going to sit around on my phone. I'm going to be looking around. There's something to be doing, right? I want to be an asset to an organization, not a liability. And so that's what, through those workshops and through the coaching, that's what we try to pair out. Or what are what behaviors, what actions do I take that make me an asset to the organization, or what am I currently doing that's making me a liability to the organization? And that is a daily thing, right? I tell everybody every single day, you are either an asset or a liability to the company. And that's not to say we don't all have bad days, right? We've all had those
Hmm.
days where, you know what, if I'm being honest, I can walk away some days. It's like, man, I was a liability today. I got to get myself in check, right? But it really starts with the recruiting process and where I'm going, and the challenging piece of hiring the right people. That's they're going to sit there and they're going to find something to be productive, to be an asset for it. But more importantly, it's, am I hiring the people around there that they're not going to walk past that, right? We're going to identify the standards that we expect from the team. But one of the number one things that I'll see from senior leaders, not just, first assistants, where it's going, but like from head pros, directors of golf, GM, they will see things that are not too standard and they won't say anything. And the problem is, the standard you walk past is the standard that you set. And so
Right.
those junior people that are in your organization, they're not stupid. They testing. That's all they kind of do. They probe the lines. They test what they can get away with in different areas. And so if we do not hold our team accountable to the standards that we have, you're setting new ones, and it slides an inch at a time. And so today I walked by, the cart barn, and there were two people on their phones. They saw me, I saw them. I didn't say anything about it. Tomorrow, I walked by and they didn't blow off the cart path, leading out to the practice range and going through. And it just slowly over time, we're not a world class organization today and a crappy one tomorrow. Those standards slide an inch at a time. And if our leaders
Hmm.
are not clearly defining those standards and what's expected for where we're trying to go and aligning our actions with that, it will slide into the point where we wake up and we're like, we're nowhere near. You're that organization you were talking about earlier. We have spiraled out of control, and it's really hard to get that back into control without moving people out.
Is there any issue with let's take the other end of the spectrum. So you have your staff is fully committed to the mentality and the mantra that we're gonna do some great work. With so many things, variables coming in society today, how do you deal with when pieces of organization get a little too wound up and that they're trying too hard? Do you come across that at all? Because if you're trying too hard, your productivity is not going to be where it should be. And if you're caring about the people in your organization, you're going to want them to be healthy, both mentally and physically. And if they're pushing too hard for too long, that obviously is not going to lead to a good place either. And then you don't want that infesting the entire system. So how do you help people deal with that?
Yeah, really, it boils down to being an engaged leader, right? And that goes back to you hear it all the time, right? Again, leadership is more of an art than it is a science, and going through. So there's not an easy answer to say, oh, you just follow this steps. The
Hmm.
important process is you have to be out among your people where it's going. I'd say you cannot. I call it leadership by email. There's far too many organizations that they sit around. Hey, I'm in management, so I'm sitting at my desk and I'm firing off emails and thinking that that's actually accomplishing something, and it's not. It's an ineffective means of communication. We've got to get out and be engaged, and if we understand our people, I'm going to be able to make those decisions, right? Hey, this guy has been burning hard. I know that he's been here for 12 days straight, what have you. What can I do to get him some time off, right? Or what can I do to give him a little energy shot in the arm, right? And it may be, and you can come up with all types of creative ways with that. But I think you answer that by being engaged, knowing your people, constantly being around them. And when you understand their baselines, you'll be able to find when they're up and when they're down and how they're going through things. And so when you're deep into them and you're constantly connected with them and figuring that out, those answers kind of come to the surface and you can figure that piece out.
Without naming any organization, is there? Can you give an example of a a company or a sports team or a group, golf club or anything that where you guys went in and it was really bad situation and you helped work them through it, or you went in and it was very good and you're like, hey, there's you're doing great, but we recommend to hit that maximum efficiency and get where you want to go. We recommend do these things. Is there any examples you can share of those things?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I can go a different direction with it. Of in the Marine Corps is the easiest examples for me, right? Of because you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly moving through some of these, and so um, I took over command of a unit that this is when I was at a commander at Parris Island, and I was there for 3.5 years doing that. And so I went through a number of different companies. I got to see a lot of different things, and they were kind of underperforming in some aspects and where it's going. And the part of part of what I was just talking about is where is the development, where is the buy-in that you're getting from, and so we were having some issues amongst the teams. It really was just not a cohesive unit, and so as we came in, the way that we kind of approached that was I did a draft. I shuffled up the entire kind of company and where it was going, and I said, "Hey, I brought in." And that wasn't just me and my senior enlisted advisor. Um, we sat there and we could have easily, "Hey, we're in charge." We could have easily just said, "Hey, this is what's happening." We brought in the leader of each of those units. Right, there were 6 different leaders for those units, and we brought them all in. And we said, "Hey, you're losing your favorite guys, but you're also losing some of your problem, your headaches that you're having, and we're giving you the opportunity to start this back over." And this goes kind of ties in earlier. I was saying of don't always have to be the one with the solutions, because by doing so, I allowed them to almost pick their teams as they came
Mm-hmm.
through this. We had an ultimate say. We vetoed a couple of those. I said, okay, hey, they gave us the 80% solution, and we were able to really compile that. And so we maneuvered the team around, which allowed us to really align the personalities a little bit more to where not just did they get buy-in because this was the team they picked. So if it fails, that's on them, right? That was the added benefit. But just by shuffling some of the personalities around and going through and finding out, do I have the right people in this company where it's going? But then once I do that, is do I have them in the right positions? Right? Are they working underneath the right types of people? And sometimes it is as simple as, hey, just have him communicate with that person, right? Have the first assistant communicate with, you know, the head pro on this issue, and all of a sudden they blend a whole lot more. The second is whatever, right? They blend a whole lot more. They just naturally connect a whole lot easier, and some of the problems go away. And so when we did that, that was a simple fix. They were really underperforming in a lot of areas. They were having a couple of different, just like, I hate to use the word, but it was like drama, right? Simple things that shouldn't be grinding our
Drama
gears.
in the Marines, that almost doesn't
Right.
like doesn't even
And I
match.
mean, it was like it was simple, small, like nitpicky problems that were kind of grinding on our gears, and what it was limiting our peak performance, right? Because it was just constantly dealing with little nitpicky problems here and there. And so by shuffling the whole teams, which was an unpopular decision, by the way, because they all had their people know what was going on, very unpopular. It really fixed a lot of that, and our performance dramatically increased when we aligned some of those personalities a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But that again comes from understanding the people, but seeking the buy-in from where they're going. And most organizations, if I want to tie this back to golf, where we see that is I come in and it's the GM and the director of golf are the one they're just making every single decision, and it's been like that for months, if not years. There's not really, or hey, director of instruction is out there on an island by himself, but the
Mm-hmm.
director of golf is responsible for coming up with this master plan. And it's like, well, why aren't we seeking their opinion? Why aren't we including other people in these plans and bringing them into this? It alleviates the burden off the GM and off the director of golf from having to come up with every single decision, but it gets us to a better solution. It aligns some of that. It drives some of that buy-in. Those are kind of the common areas that we go in, and I can see that just about any place that I go. That'd be an area that we're going to try to filter through.
Is on the golf aspect of it, and probably the most notable one in the golfing world is the Ryder Cup, because they discuss what's on paper every year, right? And then they have the actual event itself, and the Europeans seem to be a cohesive unit, all buying into the one vision. Where or at least this is the knock on it. And the American team, for some reason, doesn't seem to gel as much. How not? And I will say that the year that they did something what was deemed to be similar to what you're discussing, where they took the different pods based off of styles and types. And I mean, they had, I think, what they in the documentary, if I'm not mistaken, what they referred to the redneck pod. I mean, you had Kenny Perry from Kentucky, J.B. Holmes from Kentucky, and Boo Weekley from Milton, Florida. Um, would you, if they called you tomorrow and said, "We want you to help with the Ryder Cup because we want to win this thing and we want to win it every time," uh, what would your advice be to them, or your advisement be to the powers to be in the golf world on how to get the U.S. Ryder Cup team invincible, so to speak?
Build the team and remove the individual. Build the team and remove the individual. I think the problem with the American team when they're kind of going through that is it's filled with a bunch of individuals and a couple of cliquey buddies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead in the Europeans, and it's kind of the same way on the other side of it. But that's what makes golf really really interesting in this is because it is so much of an individual sport. But the Ryder Cup, while there's an individual aspect to it, it's really a team based event. And so as you're going through that, where a lot of people lose focus of that is it's that mission focus. They're so ingrained if it's about me, it's about my warm up, it's about doing these things in my routine, my. That's a detriment to the team, right? That's a detriment attitude to a team. And so I think that's the number one thing as I look at attributes. We just purely go off of performance almost when they're selecting the Ryder Cup. When it's like, well, who are my, if you listed the top players that are out there, right now come across that with an attribute and like an attribute checklist and find out well what makes Jordan Spieth, right? What are the things that come up with him when they're like how many of these guys would teamwork and coachability pop up as some of their key attributes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if I've got that, just say top 10 guys, well, and four or five of them, teamwork and coachability aren't in their attributes, but number 12 and 13 and 14, maybe teamwork is in that attribute. I would switch that person, right? Because 14th ranked golfer who's a better teammate is going to do better than number 9 who's an individual. Because as the pressure starts to increase, they're not all of a sudden. I'm just not a believer in rising to the occasion, right? We fall back on the habits that we create in training and what's going through, and
Comfort, right?
it's comfort, right? We fall back to those habits. So when the pressure starts to increase, I'm not all of a sudden going to become a better teammate, right? I'm going to start getting frustrated. I'm going to start lashing out. I'm going to stop listening to those that are around me. And that just comes back to the military side of the house. And every firefight that I've been in, every raid that I've been a part of, that was never one person that did those things. It was all the team in walking through things. And I had guys that, if I made mistakes, there were guys right behind me that were able to pick that up. And so I think teamwork is the number one thing. You got to have talent. I understand that, right? We got to have talented golfers that are there. But I'd be looking at how can I make them a team rather than taking the top, individuals and then trying to force them into a team. Is look a little bit deeper at who has a history of being a good teammate.
Because I think some of the signs are there where the players for a number of years didn't feel like they had enough input. It had gone back to the old days of, okay, we're the captains, or we're the assistant captains, and we're going to make these decisions, and we're going to tell you where to go. Well, that was a different place and time in history from what my idea would be. And individuals today, with all the information out there, they're not just going to sit there and say, go here, especially when the results aren't working as they should have been, at least from a U.S. side perspective. Um, and I think that came to a head when Mickelson, whether you agree with him or not, spoke up at that press conference and said that no, we were not consulted. So there, to me, that's like a cry for help, right? To someone like you and your organization that could come in there and say, okay, we're not getting the results we want. And again, going back to what we talked about before, it's spinning out of control. We know something needs to be done. We got one side, whether maybe it's subconscious that they're calling out for help. Hey, we need to be more or give more input. And the other side who's saying, no, this is the way we've always done it. And why isn't it working anymore? So it's like this perfect storm of, okay, let's reevaluate. First of all, what do we all want to achieve? Got that. How are we going to do this? What do you teammates think that we need to do to get there. Now I would play somewhat devil's advocate in that they're only together for about a week or so.
Right. Right.
Would you do something leading up to it, knowing that, and they have increased the number of captains picks, so the automatic people that make it has been reduced. So would you take the people who are looking that they're going to make it, and then maybe a couple more, and get them together more often, or at least as much as the schedules would allow, to try to develop that camaraderie and cohesiveness, or at least see who interacts better, as you described earlier?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a common, in any sport, right? A pathway to that is chemistry, right? Is an important piece to teams winning. So, there's just taking a look at that of how can I improve some of the chemistry around these guys and where it's going is challenging. Sports and the schedules that they keep up with are pretty wild in where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to mission focus. If our mission is to win the Ryder Cup, we are going to do certain things. It's going to take a lot of strain. It's going to take a lot of, and that's unfortunately we allow people to sit there, well, they're giving effort, right? Well, I don't. You come onto the Ryder Cup. I don't care about effort. Effort is the price of admission, right? That's the price of getting USA on your bag. Is we know you're going to
Right.
put effort. I want people who are going to take strain, right? If we know who's going to be coming into that, maybe you only have 75% of the roster. How can we talk to these guys about taking some of that initiative and getting together and start building some of that camaraderie and where it's going? But conversely, it's a small unit, right? And I can tell you is what I don't like about it, and we talk about the individuality of it, is these guys take to their quote unquote platforms and think that it's okay to throw out their individual opinion on a team thing. Um, Whether you like it or not, like there's a team captain. He's responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen on the team. What should be happening behind closed doors, because it's a small unit. I tell you, every military unit that I've ever been a part of, we're going into planning processes before we're going into a raid. I'm ultimately responsible for coming up with the plan and deciding what's going to go on. But we would have knockdown, drag out arguments on the right way to approach this objective and who's going to hold security and who's going to come in this way and what are we going to do when we capture an HVT, who's going to handle X, Y, and Z. We would have a lot of arguments in the planning process. But ultimately, I had to make the decision. Once I pulled all that information out, I got all those perspectives. I make the plan, I make the decision. That's what we go execute. And I think what's happening, Phil's coming out and saying, hey, I wasn't consulted. They should at least be consulting those guys. But at the end of the day, if the captain says, hey, we've come up, we've talked, we've heard their input, I've made a decision, you two are going out to play this, you go out there and that's the plan, right? You can change it when you're the captain. But we get this little individuality comes out when it's like, well, I've got a platform, someone's going to stick a microphone in my face and I'm going to go ahead and tell them that, well, I would have done it differently. I think that's like those are the types of things that break down team, right? When you start challenging the leaders publicly and doing different things, that you don't have a team, you've got a bunch of individuals, and a bunch of individuals are going to lose every time when you go against a solid team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. That and it just boggles my mind why they don't consult with people in the military who are working with teams, as we talked about when we first started, when uh, the stakes, so to speak, are so much higher,
Mm-hmm.
when it's life or limb, or something of that magnitude, versus winning or losing a golf match. It's like, okay, this is tried and tested and then retested and tried and tweaked and everything for decades. Why would you not utilize this aspect of your nation and bring some of those people in to say, hey guys, um, or ladies, here's what we need to do. If you want to win, if the goal is to win, then here's what the options are. If you don't care if you win the Solheim Cup or the Ryder Cup, then you keep doing the same thing you've been doing,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I now, if I was captain, like they're really going to tap me on the shoulder,
Right.
that would be the first thing I would say. What do you want to do? Do you want to win, or do you want to continue down the same path? Because we know where this path leads to. You grinding it out and trying to salvage something, and it doesn't work. We already know what's happened. So why don't we try it this way? Here's the people who have the experience at the most elite levels. Listen to what they say and give us your input as we discuss. But let's take a couple pages out of their book so we can all get what we want to.
Yeah. Well, and by and large, I mean, most of the organizations that we've worked with, they they have great intentions and they're great people. They're
Hmm.
just unprepared or ill-equipped. And so that's what we do. Like, using the Ryder Cup as an example, like I'm not going to come in and make you a better golfer. I can promise you that. And anybody who's golfed with me can attest to that too, right? I'm not going to make you a better golfer. But as I said from the beginning, we build world-class teams and world-class leaders. We know that process. It does not matter if it's golf, football, military, business. We understand the things that make up great high-performing teams. And that's our goal with it. It's not to come out and as we've looked at it on our team, it's a level of everybody's a product of their experiences, and we just happen to have a pretty unique set of experience, not just the training, right? That in the different schools and the different types of training that the U.S. military has spent insane amount of money in developing us, but we also have that real world combat experience of leading large and small teams in hyper complex environments. It works when we come out, and so we would sit there and look at how can I give back? How can I help other people and other organizations learn from some of those same experiences? And that's our goal as we come into it and work with those individuals and work with those teams that say, in our goal, to your point, is I'm not here to work with everybody in America. We are not for everybody. There is a certain type of people, those that want that, they want kind of that demanding presence and help us. We want to be pushed, we want to be challenged, and we want to be great. That's typically our good client, right? That kind of aligns through. Someone that just sits there and says, hey, we just want a few nuggets and we don't want to get too uncomfortable. And, you can go buy that curriculum somewhere else and stay average. That's fine. And we're very upfront about how we work with people and the types of people that we want to work with, because when we match well, the results are incredible. And it's so much fun to watch the growth of not just the individuals, but the teams when they start implementing some of these tools.
When you read a newspaper or you watch the news at all, which can be detrimental to your mental health in today's world, um, and you see a breakdown of leadership at all levels, from regardless of political affiliation. I'm not this golf podcast. We're definitely not going to political affiliation, but when you see the lack of trust and some of the things that have been happening at our nation's level, um, and then even in business levels and throughout the whole chain, all the way down to the smallest of organizations, do you think that lack of leadership and what your team and organization focus on, is that a systemic problem that's growing, or is it just that in today's world of uh, constant bombardment of information that it's just more prevalent that you know about it more often?
Yeah, I mean, I think we live in a. I just think I don't know that we do know about it more often now, but I also think we live in a world that's just filled with confirmation bias, right? I mean, we're not smarter than everybody's got their little cell phone in their pocket. We're not smarter than the algorithms that they've paid billions of dollars to try to come at us. And so you're getting most of the information that you're pulling or going through is it's all kind of speaking and confirming your own beliefs, right? We don't open up our minds to see the different kind of angles through things. And if we
Mm-hmm.
did, in varying perspectives and going through, and again, that's just rooted in humility in that regard of sitting there and thinking, I don't know it all. What can I get to help me be informed and pull through different perspectives and be willing to listen to other perspectives? I think that would help dramatically. But things that we're seeing at like the highest levels in the nation or any company or things like that, by the time it really becomes public for like, hey, there's a struggling leadership issue, I tell you that's been happening for a very long time, and it's just now rearing its ugly head. It's gotten so bad that it's now filling out over into stay in the golf side of things. It's now spilling out over into the membership that they're seeing this
Right.
discourse with us going on, and but it boils back down to it's not that they're doing like tremendously egregious or malicious things. It's actually just a cumulative point of they're not doing the basics right, right? We're not recruiting the right types of people. We haven't developed talent profiles to find out who we want to come in here. Once they're here, we're not doing the little things about staying engaged with them and managing burnout or managing engagement with our junior employees where they're doing to keep them through that and taking care of them through those types of things. They're not doing some of the basic things. And when you don't do the basic things, for a period of time, that starts to really develop bigger and larger issues within the company that are now snowballing into a point that they're not easy to get your hands around.
The one glaring example of your, I guess it would be your industry, your former industry, the military, was when there was a lot of criticism of the highest military command, and the Marine. I think he was a colonel. He actually called them out, which was his duty to do. And of all the people that got in trouble in that whole situation, he was the only one that got in trouble. And as a citizen, you're looking at this and saying, I don't. The lack of trust, as we discussed earlier, starts to dissipate as the person who gets in trouble is the only one who did what he's supposed to do, and the ones above are just go on like business as usual. And once it's got into the military, people see that it's like, wait a second, that is the one institution that we all have faith in, or we like to think that we have faith in, that is never going to be degraded to the level that it might appear to be. But hopefully, fingers crossed that's just a very minor incident in a larger scope of things.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that it probably is. But as you look at it, it's kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier, right? At Phil Mickelson calling out the other team captains, is accountability is necessary. I think that's what
mhm.
we have lost, but there are certain areas where when and how we do it is important. Um,
How would you advise somebody who is in not in the upper echelons? Let's say they're in the upper management. Let's say they're a head professional, not a GM. They're an assistant, not a head pro, or even at entry level positions of a golf organization or a business organization, that they're watching this happen to the environment that they're in. What would you advise them to do, as far as, do they speak up? Do they look for a better organization to move on to? What would be the advice if someone came to you and said, uh, here's what the situation I'm in. It's getting very toxic. What do I do?
yeah, so I think they've got to be a leader, right? And that's my point about being an active leader, not just a passive follower. Is a lot of people that are in that situation is they're watching it get bad. And with, like, number one, if you're in a toxic situation where you've just got a crappy leader on top of you, that, hey, he doesn't listen to anything, he's not doing anything, it's probably just a bad situation that you're looking for something to move on to, right? But
Hmm.
if you're watching, hey, we're not performing the way that we all think that we should be, or again, we're not hitting our vision for what's happening and where it's going, you've got to be a leader, which means leading up and down the chain of command. So you have to. I talk about, one of the things I talk about all the time from a leadership perspective is you can't lead from a stagnant pond, right? Like you have to go through. And you can't pour into others from an empty cup. So what are you doing to fill your cup so that I can be that type of a leader? If I'm a first assistant or where I've got, I need to learn and develop working with organizations like ours, or reaching out, going through, reading books, listening to podcasts. How can I develop an ability to have communications up the chain of command so that I can confidently sit down with a director of golf, or I can sit there and what doesn't happen is I run into the GM and it's like, hey, do I have the confidence to ask for some time of his and be able to, effectively lay out, hey, here's some things, I've got some thoughts, I'd love to run them by you because I think it will help us, align our vision. That's the stuff that takes courage to do, but it takes experience. And far too often people just don't do it because they're not prepared to go in and have that conversation with the GM. And when you go in unprepared and have the conversation with the GM, he's just going to crush you, right? Because they're
Right.
wasting his time. So they've got to be a leader. You've got to prepare, and that means taking strain, working extra time, thinking, reading different things. What are you doing on your downtime to be better, and so that you can learn to lead up and down the chain of command? Because when you have those active layers, that's what I need. And in a healthy culture, that's what you're going to have. One or two or three layers down, someone sitting here going, hey, I'm watching the wheels on the bus get a little squirrely over here, and I think if we just did this or this, we can handle that. And oh, by the way, I'll oversee it. I'll take it. I'll do it. Awesome. Now I didn't see it from that perspective. You're right. And now you're charged with going to take that. It just takes courage to be able to do so, but it takes preparation so that you understand how to have conversations at that level, how to have your message organized and some type of result to pitch up and sit there and say, hey, is this something that can work and would help us adjust to this and this? Now you're being, and that goes back to being an asset for the organization, where you're helping getting us back on track and stay kind of between the bumpers, if you will, before it gets, too far down. Too far down the line where, hey, now it's just too toxic and I'm just mailing it in before I find my way out of here.
So yeah, you're doing everything that you possibly can to help right the ship. You're resourceful. You're contributing,
All right.
even if everything around you is crumbling. It's like, hey, if I can do anything, I'm going to do what I can to make this work, even though the people above me and below might not be doing the same. I'm going to try to help them the best I can to get this going in the right direction. Hopefully, they understand that and turn their own selves around as well.
Right. And I think that starts with mentality, right? Hey, I want to be a producer. I want to be an asset within this organization. That's what I'm going to try to do. That the mentality starts first. This is what I want to do. But then, like I said, you then have to take and put that into action. If I want to be the producer, what are the behaviors that I need to do in order to be that person? I need to be learning more about that type of stuff, because that's just not, those aren't lessons that you're learning coming up in the golf business of, hey, here's how you're going to have, effective communication plans and lines of communication 2 and 3 levels above you. You're not getting that type of training. So you have to go and have a bias for action to seek that out. Fill your own cup with that information. Be ready. So having that vision of the type of leader that you want to be, second assistant, first assistant, what have you, head pro, any of those things, having that vision for what you want to do, but then it's putting a plan of action into place so that the things that you are doing are helping to support that. And so being able to do that and take it to the next level is, I want to be a producer. I've got that mentality. Well, now let me go make sure that I'm equipped to actually be a producer. That's where most people are not doing it. They'll agree with the mentality all day long. They'll nod their head up and down, like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But then they don't take the steps to actually be equipped to be a producer. They're just
Is
hoping that they're going to be ready when their time comes.
is it because they're not making the commitment to it, or they just think that the mountain that they're fighting or trying to get up is too steep, and they just don't see any uh, hope instead of commit? As you said, that they don't see the hope or maybe light at the end of the tunnel, but you're not going to see that if you're making a commitment, because you might be going the wrong direction. So the fundamental is first to make the commitment to do what you can and become better.
Right. Well, I don't think they know. Right. I think that's where it boils into why what we do, right, is they're doing what they've seen in the industry. They're doing what they've
Mm-hmm.
seen other people do. And it's not a common thing, right? This continuous being a student of the game, this continuous learner, soaking up different sources of information, different skill sets, knowing yourself, seeking self improvement. That's just not something that is what I've seen readily found out in different industries and where it's going. And so I don't know that it's a fault of that, back then. I don't know that it is. They're not choosing to be lazy or not develop. As they've just never been taught that's how you do that. They've watched the people ahead of them grow through. It's like, hey, I'll get that when I get promoted to first assistant. I'll start getting more
Right.
responsibility. I'll get that when I get promoted to head pro, because I'll start getting that. No. Start doing that now, right? What are those things that I can do? And it's on my individual time. I can choose to sit on the couch and watch TV or watch the Masters all weekend, or I
Mm-hmm.
can actually take some time and dedicate some time to learning something new this week. And we,
It's commitment to skill development based on the goal that you want to achieve.
right, what
Would
are
you
the
say
things
fair
that I need to
assessment?
be doing?
Yeah.
And
Um,
we were negative about kind of the access to information that we had earlier. And I would say that on the contrary to that, that's the other beautiful thing is you have access to anything you want now. You
mhm.
go listen to an entire podcast on leading up a chain of command. I'm sure it's out there, right? I know there's books on the topic. There's little TED Talks on the topic. So there's also a lot of good information that's out there that you can go seek. But are we getting out there and are we doing that?
Right. You just got to look for you. The first step. It's like, with with coaching golfers. It's like what comes first, the confidence or the good play. And I've gotten to the point, I've done it long enough. It's like, okay, well, first comes the commitment that you're going to do what you need to do in order to play at an advanced level.
Right.
Or at the next level that you want to get to that you don't know how to get there. So you're coming to me to help you. So usually at that point, when a player comes to me and says, I want to get to this level. Okay. How how bad do you want to get there? Because it's not going to be very comfortable. You're going to be learning and be growing, right? So
Right.
there's going to be some growing pains along the way. Um, but I always tell them that you will get confident as you develop the skill to be better than you are now.
And that's with anything, right? And that is the approach
Yes.
that we take with a leadership aspect is. And so we do a lot of work in football, and I talk about that as every team I've been to, they will spend in crazy amount of time and energy in making them bigger, faster, and stronger in the weight room. They'll spend a crazy amount of time and energy in making sure that they're better tactically, right? They're running better routes, they're throwing better balls, they're running better defenses, they understand the playbook. But we don't put that same energy into the character and leadership aspects. Well, why? It's scenario based, just like anything else, right? Same thing with a golf swing. I can't expect to hit flush golf shots if I don't have the right mechanics and I'm putting that work into figuring that stuff out. So why do I change that logic when it comes to a leadership role? Why am I not doing those basics, the different fundamentals to make me a good leader so that I'm prepared when I become a head pro? We
Hmm.
just wait until you get promoted to be a head pro, and now it's just figure it out when you get up there. And that's what we try to combat. We try to get in and find and identify the right types of emerging leaders and the right types of leaders, and then just equip them with those tools before they need them, so that way they're ready when it happens. And we saw that in the pandemic. The amount of companies that called us right as COVID hit was they started to realize, hey, everybody's a hero in a bull market, and then it came crashing down, and they called us and said, hey, I've got a lot of people in leadership roles with no leadership ability. And it wasn't
Mm,
exposed until, hey, the market changed on them.
right.
And that's really what it's at. We don't need leaders. Our teams do not need leaders for the black and white decisions, right? It's really, really simple. It's really, really easy. They know what to do. Leaders exist to be in the gray. When it's a little bit of a judgment question and it's going here or going there, are we providing the guidance? Are we equipped for those types of things? And that's what we find is, again, when the pressure is on, we're not all of a sudden going to be a better leader. We have either prepared for that moment or we have not, and we're going to get tested one day, and that preparation is going to be exposed.
Yeah, hope is not a form of preparation.
Well, it is. It's a failing one.
It's a failing one. That's right. Um, I mean, we're talking a lot about leadership and development, but you have another part of your organization, and I got it. Impact performance coaching. What's the differentiation between the two?
Yeah, so it's a supplemental aspect. And so what we've found in working with teams is we do a lot of experiential stuff, or coming in and doing a keynote or doing a workshop with an organization is a good way to give information, right? What we have found is the best results to increase transformational change in both teams and individuals is consistency and accountability over time. And so what we've been able to do with that is, whether we come in and work with like I said, keynotes and workshops, is we then supplement that on the back end of, once we've given the information and we've taught you these concepts, and we get the head nods up and down, hey, I agree that I should be doing those things. The performance coaching piece is when we partner with organizations or individuals over an extended period of time, where now we walk them through what that looks like, right? I can give you some top level information of things that you need to be doing as a leader, but now the performance coaching piece is I'm walking through that specific thing of, hey, I'm a first assistant and I'm trying to take on more responsibility within our organization. We talked about this and this and this in the workshop. How do I do that if I'm going down to coach or if I'm going down to interact in the cart barn? This is what I'm going to do today. So our performance coaching process with that is really helps individuals and teams with the implementation of some of the leadership principles that we teach and we talk about.
I think that's a big thing because as a person gets promoted to whatever level, it's like they're going from swimming in a pond to swimming in the ocean,
Right.
or swimming from a pond to a lake and then the ocean. No matter how adept they are at treading water and swimming, I mean, this is now a larger, vaster uh, pool of responsibility. I guess I would call it at any level, and it there has to be. You can get lost very easily in that and frustrated, and having some guidance in how to do that and navigate that would be invaluable. I would have to imagine.
Well, it's very similar to, at least what I equated as, is every operation that I went on, I tried to have at least some level of air cover overhead, or snipers in what we would call an overwatch position, where they're in a good tactical position and they're able to give me eyes on and provide cover for things that I just may not see. I may have a great plan, but they're able to see things, or if I'm going to, something around a corner or what have you, there's just another level of a security blanket there for me that we can communicate and they can see and they can take care of. That's how I view our performance coaching. Is we're a level of Overwatch, right? We're going to equip you with some of those tools, but a lot of it is we build those relationships, and we build great relationships with the folks that we continue down the path on. And as we build those relationships, sometimes it's, hey, we're making some hard corrective action on the things that they're doing with their team. Other times it's just that sounding board that, a director of golf, a head pro, instructor, whatever, they call us and say, hey, this is the situation I've been dealing with. This is what I'm about to go do about it. We just become that sounding board and a strategic advisor for them of like, hey, yep, be that confidence. That's the right play. Go do it. And then we hop on a
Mm-hmm.
phone or next meeting with them, and it's like, let's talk about how that went. And sometimes it went well. We prepared the right way. We did it. We knocked it out of the park. Other times it was, well, it was a lesson learned. It didn't go as well as I wanted to, and I think this is why. And so we're just able to watch that growth over time as people build that confidence to handle just the dynamic types of leadership challenges that they come across as they get promoted and work through organizations.
Yeah, it doesn't it as we've talked about this now for a while, it doesn't sound like leadership is a like people go into something trying to be an asshole,
Right.
right? It's like that they get overwhelmed from above them and below them. They haven't maybe been coached or taught how to be a leader. They're thrust into a situation, and they become overwhelmed by it. And an outfit like yours is there to help them. Hey, look, here's the aspects. Here's how we can help you. Here's what leadership is, first of all, and here's how you can become better. And then when you're in this situation or the next one, we can help you when you're the emotional toll and your brain's going in 100 different directions. We can help you say, hey, look, okay, we've between your grouping and all of you there, we've been in situations like this. Here's what we think you did right. Here's what we think you do better.
Right.
So don't worry about it. You're going to improve. You've made the commitment. You're coming to us. You've made the commitment to improve.
And it's that level of confidence that we're able to give them, right? And that goes back to why who you have teaching this type of stuff matters, right? Because we can talk about these things and go through it of small teams, large teams, but that overwhelming piece. I mean, we have just scenario after scenario of when I can talk with. There's some big challenges, especially in the golf business and in some of these clubs and what's going on. There's definitely some big time complex challenges that they face. But when we're working with them and I can relate to them with, I unfortunately ran through it, a mass casualty incident as we were rolling through things. We had 5 guys hit at the same time. Murphy's Law hits, right? We lose communication. I'm the senior
Mm-hmm.
man on scene. Everybody's looking at you, right? Are you going to keep it together and quickly think through and process something? Like, if there was ever a time to freak out, it's when I've got 5 guys dying on us and no communication. I've got to try to get them, the help that they need and figure out what's going on. Those are the types of things I can sit there. If we can do that and we can walk through that process and how we handle that and how we handle communication and composure and dealing that type of stuff, we can help GMs and directors of golf and head pros walk through some of the challenges that they have, no matter how complex they are. And so it just helps when builds that kind of trust with folks where it's like, okay, you've been in situations like this, and it can kind of guide them through that process to walk through it and build that trust with them.
What do you do when an organization calls you in? You do your observation. You write your plans and you go and present it to them, and then you get the kickback of no, we're not. We don't think that that's the problem. We're not going to implement that. How do you navigate that situation? How do you go about getting them to understand what you're seeing and that they're not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question. And just like everything else in life, right, is I think you have to earn the right to ask certain questions, and I think you have to build trust. And then that will happen every now and then as people might not agree with our assessment, and at that point it's just we haven't built a deep enough relationship at that point that they're not fully trusting what we have and where it can go. And so I think that's on us to find ways to, okay, hey, what are some of the ways that we can adjust and show them, hey, well, then just try these 2 things and see what happens. And when they start to watch the needle move a little bit, that's when they'll kind of
Mm-hmm.
come back around and kind of walk through. But ultimately, it's always a give and take, right? Of what, because it's not my company, it's not my vision, it's not my culture. What we try to work in through and goes, I want to talk with the GM and learn exactly what he's thinking about. What is he trying to implement and what does he identify are some of the friction points, and where we have overlap from our assessment and his assessment, that's where we can really make value for them and make change there.
That's interesting because a lot there's a coaches are I've talked enough, and I was guilty of this myself many years ago before I got older and wiser and learned to the contrary. But if you had a student and they were whatever level they were at, and they were playing better, and you got them to a certain level, but then they went somewhere else, and the common response was always, well, they just didn't get it. Okay, and I got to a point. It's like, okay, if enough people are saying this, then them getting it is on or not getting it is on me because I'm the one that's relaying the information, and maybe I need to become better at relaying it in a way that they can better comprehend and understand and implement. So it took me a long time to realize that, and the ego. Uh, I mean, you got to have an ego check, but when it happens more than once, it you got to look in the mirror and say, okay, what's the common denominator here? Me.
Right.
And students leaving who I thought shouldn't have, or they weren't getting better at the rate that they started. That's my responsibility. That's what they're coming to me for. That's what they're paying me for. So yeah, I wish I would have learned that sooner.
It's on us, right? To fit. We're either not communicating it the right way, or we need to find other ways to communicate with them. And it's not just communication. That's an important piece. But what makes them tick? And what you're talking about is, well, what makes that certain individual tick, right? I can't just have one leadership style with everybody. I say the principles that we teach, they stay the same regardless of the industry and what I'm going through. But how I talk and interact with a football program and a team compared to a private country club golf staff, different, right? Where it's
Mm-hmm.
going and how it'll be received. And so it's on us to, and as leaders in any role, is I have to understand my people. I have to understand the people that I'm talking with and where it's going to make sure that I'm communicating in a way that they best understand and that they can receive it and where they're going to execute on it. If they don't, Pete, you're 100% right. That's on me. Right, or that's on you that I failed to get that point communicated to an area that created value for them.
I give you a very short, interesting story about that. When I first saw that implemented, was I was working at a very high end club that a lot of the members were CEO level, extremely, extremely successful. This was like the top of the food chain, the the majority of the membership, and they had a golf school. Now I was just a backdrop guy that I was helping with the school, and they let me sit in on all the dinners and the discussions and everything, and I'm just sitting there absorbing it all. I mean, I was a young kid, early 20s, just out of school. And there was a sports psychologist that came in, and he was talking to the head of instruction, and he was explaining to him the type of person who was there attending that golf school. They're all high achievers, they're all CEOs, they're all uh, type A, they're hard drivers, they're all these things. And he said, okay. So he starts his discussion with the question of, I understand there's a lot of people, very successful people in this room. You've achieved the ultimate in your industry. But how many of you have ever played in a US Open or a PGA Tour event or won a club championship? I mean, he just kept going down, and none of them could raise their hand. So he set that up right from the beginning on why they should pay attention without saying you need to pay attention because I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
I mean, he phrased it in their perspective so that they would have a total understanding of why they needed to listen.
Yeah.
It's like, you're here to learn. We get that. You're used to being here, but now you're down here, right? And they hadn't experienced that in a long time because most of them were retired and they had worked in their industry for 40 years and done a lot of great things, but they wrapping their head around that they're now beginners for the most part in a new skill was very important for if they were going to achieve what they wanted to.
Right.
But that was eye opening as a young person to see that.
Yeah, and that's I talk a lot about communication in some of our courses and the things I do because I think that the problem with communication is the illusion that it's happening. Right? There's I said all of these things, yeah, but there's a difference of saying it and communicating it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
communicating it effectively. And that message that you just pointed out is that's an effective way of communicating his message and creating value right out of the gate. And people who, and that's the art to it. People who understand that and can be a more effective communicator will undoubtedly see more success in their teams than those that do not.
What's something that one, two, three things, whatever, however many you want to to touch on that you wish you would have known 5, 10 years ago?
Whew. It's a good question. I mean, I think the biggest piece that I do more and more and more now is to not be the easy button for the people underneath me, right? I can talk about development opportunities, can talk about it, how important it is to empower the people underneath you of where you're trying to go. But oftentimes we as leaders, we tend to be the easy button for our
Mm-hmm.
people because you know what? It's just faster to the old saying, right? If you want it done right, do it yourself. It's just faster for me to do it, and I get it done where I'm going to go. And I, as a young leader, I would do that a lot. And the perspective that I would say has changed for me with that is I'm actually failing my team when I'm the easy button for them, right? When I allow them to bring their problems up to me and I just solve it for them. When I allow them to, hey, we don't know what to do about this. Can you give us this? And it's like, yep, it sits on my desk. And I allow them to constantly put that stuff back onto me, or they come up with something. I am killing their development. I'm robbing them of the opportunity to work through a problem on their own. I'm robbing them of the opportunity to figure out how to assess a situation, make a decision, provide a solution, and then communicate that solution up higher up. That's an art, right? And that's what we're talking about trying to develop. I changed that lens years ago that I was not very good at that, as a young leader, and even in combat and doing some of those things, as you start to learn that is, hey, I am a better in the long run if I have a team that is filled with critical thinkers. If I've got a team that is they've got the freedom to be innovative in their solutions and their decision making and rolling through that, I am better in the long run with a team like that. And so kind of eliminating that short term mindset of let me just do something quickly for them, or let me just take this, or let me be that easy button, it robs our team of that. And so I've flipped that lens over the years. That's something that I wished I knew as I was early on, is just don't be the easy button for your team.
As we're wrapping up here or getting close to the end, if you had one message to tell the world, what would it be?
Develop small unit leaders. Develop small unit leaders. Pour into others. Finding out what is it that, as you take that ownership of that, what is it that I know something about that won't happen unless I take responsibility for it. Some of that will be the things that you're doing, but a lot of that from a leadership perspective, it's the people who are around me. What am I doing? And I tell you, Pete, I was kind of challenged this week with a message of, as I look at that, of going, who, we're a liability or an asset every single day, who is being inspired by my actions in my life today? That's a daily question. Am I inspiring other people? And I will tell you that is a core responsibility of a leader, right? I better be inspiring other people around me on a daily basis and what's happening. And so that's kind of a convicting question as I look at it and go, who is being inspired by my actions today and my life today in a good way, and not in a look at me rah rah way, meaning the burden of leadership of I better be doing something to make somebody better today and make somebody going through there. So I think that that's kind of the convicting question that I've got on my heart right now is who am I inspiring on a daily basis?
That's a very good one. And through this podcast, that's one that I'm going to take to heart. The other one was, if you can't find something to show gratitude for at the end of the day, then go do something for somebody that you can say that I'm glad that I did that for them.
Right.
Um, so that's some very, very good advice. And for anyone out there listening, you need to strongly, strongly listen to that and just try to implement it each day. I mean, and if you fail at it, so what? Do it again tomorrow. And if you fail again tomorrow, keep doing it. Eventually, you're going to become better and stronger at it, and it's going to make some big, big impacts on your life. Um, what do you have coming up? Anything? Are you talking anywhere? Lectures? You got people can check you out or come listen and get a book or anything coming out?
Yeah, no book coming out right now, but we're constantly running different courses and going through. We've got a couple different speaking. We're speaking all over the country here, kind of May through June. It's getting kind of busy in that regard,
Mm-hmm.
to just different organizations and that aspect of it. But from our standpoint, if for those leaders that are out there struggling with it, we'd love you for reach out to us on social media, reach out to us through our website, and inquire about some of our courses on how we can equip leaders, right? It's about taking action. And so for those people that may be sitting and listening to this and saying, hey, I just want a little bit more, I want that little bit of an edge, we'd love to have a conversation with them and find out if we're a good fit to help them on that journey and get them to that next step.
I will have all your social media handles, everything in the summary, as well as your website. But go ahead, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can follow you,
Sure.
check out more of your info.
Yep, pretty simple. I mean, we're on both me and Impact is on Instagram, or Facebook is a good way, on in LinkedIn as well. We put a lot of content out there on LinkedIn, but our website is impactthepace.com. That's pretty simple. Is the easiest way to find us there. There's a couple different links that you can send us an email or kind of go through our numbers on there, reach out to us, and just have a conversation and see if we might be the right fit. And if we're not, I know a lot of people that may be a better fit, and kind of go through, and we'll make sure that people are ready to go.
Get them in the right
Get them
direction.
in the right direction. That's our goal, is just to be there to support people and serve them. And so we'd love to partner with them. We'd love to work with them. But if for whatever reason we're not, we know a lot of people that I can try to give them some other resources and get them set up.
So it's a perfect avenue for anybody out there who's been contemplating. If you're contemplating, then you're ready to, you've been struggling or you haven't achieved what you wanted to. You can check Impact out online. Again, I'll have all the links to Joe and Impact and everywhere. If it doesn't align what you need, then like he just said, he can get you pointed in the right direction, and you can get to achieving what you want to. Joe, I appreciate this. It's been awesome. It's great learning experience for me, and hopefully everybody, well, not hopefully, everybody that listens to this is going to pick something up, if not a number of things. And I hope a fair number of them call you and ask you for your input on some things, and bring you on board to advise them in different capacities.
We'd love to do it, Pete. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos, where I give regular tips on all areas of the game, to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level, and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area, and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.